I'd like to invite the presenters onto the dais, starting with Mr. Ajit Manocha. Sir. Mr. Tetsuro Higashi-san. Krishnan Srinivasan, Lam Research. And Dr. Fabio Pelasi from Germany. To start this with a running start, Ajit sir, can you introduce Mr. Higashi?
Yes, thank you, Ashwini. It's really a great honor for me to introduce a great friend, Higashi-san, and also an industry veteran, semiconductor industry veteran. Just to say a few words about Higashi-san. First of all, we in India should feel very lucky to have a veteran like him who is truly a visionary and a great leader. He started this industry more than 40 years ago when industry did not exist. And the company that he led, Tokyo Electron, is the largest semiconductor company in Japan. And he had many senior positions. The last position was the chairman of Tokyo Electron. And he's still providing the adult supervision and leadership and advisory role to Tokyo Electron. And as a result, last year, Tokyo Electron has the best year ever in the history of Tokyo Electron. So, and this is all because of his leadership. He has had several positions in Tokyo Electron, but in addition to that, he has done a lot of work to give to the industry. For example, SEAJ, who is a partner here for this conference, he had been the chairman of that. He's also the chairman of SEMI, for which I'm the CEO, and he had been chairman. But besides that role, he still continues to support this industry by coming to various events and share his vision with the industry. Now, he is about 4 to 5 years senior to me in the industry. And the way I have described people like Terry, he's the founder of semi industry, and people like me are the builders of the industry. Now, both founders and builders who have done enough work to bring the industry in 1980 to roughly $20 billion to $420 billion now, and we're going to take it to $1 trillion industry. But the only way we can take this industry further is to inspire the new leaders sitting in this room and in the world to follow the practices of Terry Higashi, that he believes in. His passion is to innovate and invest. And that's what we need to do, innovate and invest and build the industry. And I think coming to India, there are a lot of opportunities, and there is a lot of talent. Of course, I will talk in my talk also. But more importantly, I think Terry Higashi, and especially myself being from India, it's obvious to say that my love for India. But he showed his love for India by having this vest to show that he loves India. So he especially does for this one. Terry, with no further ado. Thank you.
Ajit, thank you very much for the kind introduction. It's my great honor to share with you the brilliant future of the semiconductor industry in this exciting event. So first, let's start with a video. And first, let me introduce Tokyo Electron. Tokyo Electron is one of the global leading suppliers of semiconductor and flat panel display production equipment. Our business supports the fundamentals of semiconductor manufacturing. And this figure shows the result of the last fiscal year. But this year and this coming March, we'll achieve the sales over $10 billion in this year. And as we all know, IoT and big data has just arrived. As you see here, the number of connected things are increasing, and it will bring the data explosion. Just as data is a new oil, just as oil has changed our society of the last century, data will change the society for the next 100 years. How exciting it will be. It's all semiconductor processes, stores, and analyzes the data and creates new knowledge and intelligence from the data. Without the innovation of semiconductor, IoT and AI era will not have a bright future. Looking at the industry in 2058, 40 years from now, because I spent already 40 years, so I'll see 40 years later, looking at the industry with a scale of 100 years, this industry is still at the bud stage, waiting for the time to brew. However, whether to go like this depends on whether we can continuously create innovative technologies. So what will drive the semiconductor market? There are three I's which will drive the semiconductor market. First I is the interface between the real world and IT networks. Semiconductors will bring us new experience and feelings like virtual reality. Second I is the intelligence. Semiconductor as a brain will realize high security and low latency indispensable for such as autonomous driving. Third I is the infrastructure for data communication and storage. Enormous volume of semiconductors will be used in cloud computing, 5G networks, and data centers. Let me show you some examples very briefly. First one is VR, augmented reality, and mixed reality. VR started as gaming console, but it's now used in enterprise and industrial use. Next is smart speakers. Sooner or later, every home will have this voice interface AI assistant. These are communication robots giving hearing to humans through conversations and actions. It seems that era when human beings and AI live together have actually started. Self-driving car will really drive the semiconductor demand more than anything else. The success of self-driving depends on what innovative AI will be created. The last one is smart factory. Using machine data collected by sensors, intelligence of semiconductor realizes the high productivity of the whole factory. Semiconductor technology will also evolve. Let me talk a little bit about the future of semiconductor technology. In the past, we tried to make each device better or superior to its past version. we are very focused the individual performance of each device and having each device surpass each ability of human performances. For example, semiconductor devices have achieved tremendous performance as an individual component such as a memory, logic, and image sensor. That makes it possible to have information storages more than an entire library, mathematical calculations much faster than a team of geniuses, and pixel resolutions exceeding human vision. We are now at a new era of creating super integration in addition to improve specialty. It's not just component or device separately. Rather, put them all together to make a fully integrated system. I would like to say, it's time to make a pizza by using some of the best ingredients. We think in innovation as a system, not only within a device. Then, how about the future of the semiconductor? The semiconductor has been contributing to enhance a logical part of our brain, parts by parts, function by function, such as a memory, logic, image sensor, as I mentioned. To accelerate evolution of human capability, there is plenty of room for the semiconductor industry at the inspiration and creativity. Experience-based, adaptable hardware that can find a problem to be solved is required. I think the neuromorphic device is one of the promising devices enhancing human capability in terms of the inspiration and creativity. The combination of Neumann and neuromorphic computing will help to get closer to the true intelligence. One very interesting trend we are seeing is platformers such as Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple now pay very high attention on semiconductor devices. This is probably because they thought the future of AI exactly depends on the creation of new advanced semiconductor devices. These are the headlines we found in the recent news. You can see how actively IT giants get in semiconductor domains. Amazingly, even Tesla is embarking on semiconductors. By the way, as you know, R&D for non-conventional architecture is, thank you very much, in keen competition. Besides, neuromorphic and quantum computing is increasing the speed of development. In any case, those are technologies that tremendously evolve human society. In order to develop such innovative architectures, there requires a new approach, not a traditional one. It's necessary to get on the new platform and to co-optimize diverse technologies with various engineers by closer collaboration. Now, I would like to talk about expectations to Indians. 70 years have passed since the semiconductor was born. Behind the high growth of the semiconductor industry, there is a history that each country or region has entered it with its own strengths. Right now, China is on its way to enter the market with huge capital investment. Next may be India. If India would enter the market with its strengths of intelligence, wisdom, and the power of creative idea, I think an interesting evolution will be brought to the semiconductor industry. If there is no electricity, people would say, let's bring electricity. But in India case, people say, let's make something that does not require electricity. Out-of-box thinking. India is able to contribute to the creation of innovative semiconductor of the next century with its R&D capabilities based on such power of creating excellent ideas. I forget to push the button. Just as in the case of Silicon Valley in the US, if there is some integrated semiconductor R&D base or institutions in India, diverse top talents gather in and innovation will be born. If innovation is born, a new business will be created based on the innovation. Then the new market will come up and foreign capital will flow into India in anticipation of a huge population of 1.3 billion. As a result, with this flow, manufacturing function will be established in India, and the national project Make in India will be accomplished. I believe that entering the market with India's core competence of R&D capability is very effective both for India and for the development of the semiconductor industry as a whole. India has a very high economic growth rate and is blessed with a huge population and young workforce. Also, as you can see in the Index of Global Competitiveness report published by the World Economic Forum, India has high global competitiveness, and the potential growth for manufacturing is very high. However, that's not enough for semiconductor manufacturing. Semiconductor manufacturing requires the infrastructure of very basic but well-maintained. The factory operates day and night ceaselessly, so that it's not allowed to stop power even if it's 1 minute. Water shortage is also not allowed. If these requirements are not satisfied, semiconductor manufacturing will not be successful. We hope India to participate in manufacturing semiconductors, but it requires to develop further infrastructure to ensure cost-effective quality of manufacturing by the strong support of the government. I would like to end my talk adding that what ultimately we aim for is to develop society with the power of semiconductor and to make mankind prosperous and happy. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Higashi-san. May I invite Mr. Ajit Manocha, President and CEO of SEMI, the Global Association of Semiconductor Manufacturing Industry, to take the dais. Mr. Manocha was formerly CEO of Global Foundries. He has been one of the friends and mentors of the Indian industry, having come over to India on multiple occasions in ISA events and in government meetings. He has also served on the President's Committee for Advanced Manufacturing Partnerships and the US President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology during the last 4 years. Sir.
Thank you, Good afternoon. I hope you're inspired with the previous speaker and the panel discussion. Now, my view is that anything you do, you have to ask what to do, why to do, when to do, and how to do. For India, the enabling semiconductor ambition. What to do, I think, is clear. We want to have the semiconductor ambition. Why? Very clear. I think there was many speeches this morning, and I don't think that's a debate. When and how? Now, my simple answer for when is the time is now. And on how, just listening to the panel discussion before this session, you could tell that we are divided on how. The reason we are divided because nobody has a complete understanding of how to do it. And I think that's where I want to offer my help. And I will offer my help in two ways. One is as the head of SEMI, and I'll spend probably 10 minutes or 15 minutes on how SEMI can enable India's ambition to become a semiconductor powerhouse, along with the ISA as a partner. And second is people like myself. I look at it this way. I left India 44 years ago, but my heart never left India. If I remember the song of my time, Mera juta hai Japani, meri patloon Englishstani, mera dil Hindustani. I think juta is not Japani anymore, pant is not Englishstani anymore, but dil is still Hindustani. And probably if you look around, half the things you belong to you are made in China. And if the time is now, if we don't really act on that, I'm afraid हमारा दिल भी जो है ना हिंदुस्तानी से बदलना शुरू हो जाएगा, and we'll have to learn to eat different foods. So I think no need to debate on the timing. The question is how. So with that, let me see if this works. Okay. So what I like to cover in next 20 minutes, 15 minutes or so, a little bit about SEMI, and then India's promising electronics ecosystem. Again, some of these things have been said this morning. I'm not going to dwell much on my slides, but I'll just go with the key messages from each slide. And of course, you can have access to these slides from ISA. The reason that we put all the information slides, I did not know who will be the previous speakers and so on, but most speakers have covered quite a few topics about the data and the trends. China on the rise. I mean, everybody talks about China, and I'll spend a few minutes on China, key considerations for India's government and the industry, and how SEMI can enable. Now, SEMI has been in existence for 48 years. SEMI started in 1970, and SEMI has a global presence in all the 7 key regions: North America, Europe, China, Taiwan, Korea, Southeast Asia, and Japan. And we have ecosystem infrastructure everywhere where we bring the world together. And if you look at on the top, it's a very busy slide. I mean, SEMI has been involved since the inception in setting standards. Standards means for this industry, if you want to set up a fab, and the equipment which cost for a $10 billion fab is $9 billion, $8 to $9 billion will be the equipment for the bleeding edge fab. And that equipment has to have certain standards. Otherwise, every company will make different equipment, industry will never work. That was one big value, the standard created by SEMI. Advocacy, we spent time with the world leaders to drive the public-private policies to promote free trade, to promote global interactions in the industry, to promote government's ambition to invest in technology so that R&D bill is lower, to promote proper immigration policies so that the talent can flow around the world, and also to promote that there should be competitive tax policies for all the countries so that nobody is disadvantaged. For example, US was the most disadvantaged country from the corporate tax, 40-some%, 38% tax. Recently, it has been changed to 20%. So that's the role SEMI plays in driving advocacy. Talent development is a big issue in many countries of the world. SEMI has been driving that for the last 17 years, And as we speak, we are double downing on the talent development. Thought leadership. When I started this industry in Bell Labs in 1980, there was a hunger to learn from each other. There were a lot of thought leaders. We did not know how the industry will evolve. Actually, we thought Moore's Law will end in 10 years and 5 years, and 40 years later, I still think Moore's Law has a long way to go. And that's where the thought leaders come to pave the path for the future vision. My personal view, my vision, the Moore's Law has got a long way to go yet. I don't think it's ending. Market intelligence, we provide a lot of data. And the other important thing SEMI provides, exhibitions and conferences around the world. Just to give you an example, the last conference Semicon was in Korea. 45,000 people were there. Next one is in China. We expect 70,000 people will be there from around the world. And that's really that's the mantra of SEMI, is to bring people in the country and connect, collaborate, and learn to innovate from each other by collaboration. And of course, we create a lot of communities, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Sorry. So SEMI started with the foundation of Association for Equipment and Material Companies. And that is the core foundation. But as the industry has evolved, our reach has been extended to all the members of value chain, from equipment materials to fabless, to the design houses, to the IP generators, to the foundries, and to the system houses. And that's where SEMI has really excelled in last 10, 15 years to expand into the total supply chain. And if you look at the supply chain, I mean, there's really massive convergence going on across the members of the value chain. And SEMI has more than 2,000 members from these companies and connect them together. The idea is to really grow the semiconductor roles, to grow the foundation companies, equipment material companies, their growth. And in addition, SEMI has been approached by the other associations like FlexTech, MEMS and Sensors, Fab Owners Association, to partner with SEMI so they can leverage the platform of SEMI to bring the global perspective for these businesses. Additionally, in my next slide, maybe that's better. We have been driving few verticals which are the focus area for 2018. IoT, and we talked about this 3 years ago or 4 years ago. People thought IoT is a hype, it's not going to happen. Today, it's a unanimous belief this is a multi-trillion-dollar industry. That's why I really didn't feel comfortable sitting there and not saying a comment. There is so much you can participate in IoT. Now, what is IoT? It's the connectivity of devices. And I think Intel, a lady from Intel this morning talked about 50 billion devices will be connected by 2020. Now look at another way. World population is about 7 billion. Only 3.5 billion people are connected with the internet. There is so much potential. So again, don't be disheartened by the cost of making fabless semiconductor chips or fabless chips. For IoT, your mature technologies and connectivity, there are a lot of ideas you can come up with, and you can exploit this market beyond anybody's imagination. So next is the smart factory. I think Higashi-san talked about that. Smart manufacturing. There are a lot of elements of smart manufacturing, machine learning, industry IoT, and so on. SEMI is again driving this vertical in 2018. Smart auto, I don't think I need to say much. This is real. Maybe the fully autonomous car will not happen in next 10 years, but semi-autonomous car is going to happen. The car is going to be very different what it is today. I think we heard that comment many times today. I have visited few car makers in Europe, and I can tell you during my career in Philips, when I was the CEO in Philips Semiconductor, I used to supply to automakers 15, 20 chips in the car in 80s and 90s. Today, top of the line car has about 10,000 chips. by year 2025, one of the automakers in Europe, big one, said, Mr. Manocha, we expect 70,000 chips in the car by 2025. Basically, the car will be semiconductors on the wheels. Again, lot of potential for India. Lot of potential for India. There's no question about that. So, and again, we don't need all the bleeding edge technology for the automotives. A lot of sensors, and SEMI has connectivity with the MEMS and sensors group. We can help a lot with the flexible hybrid electronics and so on. So many things we can do in India. Health. I tell you, I started SEMI less than a year ago. Actually, 1 year, March 1st, tomorrow will be 1 year anniversary. And with this role, I'm getting exposed to a lot of applications in medical. And it's so inspirational that what we can do with bunch of sensors. And with sensors, we can understand the brain, we can understand the body, we can anticipate what's going wrong, or we can also provide the right kind of medication on a timely basis on an automotive way. So again, so many applications to make better health. Now, when Tari Higashi talked about better future for the society, that also means health. If there's no health, society will not have a better future. And smart data. I think Ms. Rai from Intel said it very, very accurately and very elegantly that the data is the new currency or new oil, as Mr. Higashi said. And there's again a lot of opportunities. I was listening to one of the panel discussion at World Economic Forum just a month ago. They talked about 129 countries are showing GDP growth, which is unprecedented. So besides having the top leadership like in India, we are fortunate to have Prime Minister Modi. Not 129 countries have smart leaders like Modi, but they attributed the growth, GDP growth, to the heavy involvement in innovation and technology. And AI was one technology mentioned multiple times in Davos just last month. So again, the world is going very fast, and I think it's time for us to go fast ourselves in India. So again, this SEMI is heavily involved in the platforms, and we can definitely help the interested people to work with us to take it further. Now, I will not spend too much time on this slide. I think this is a repeat of a lot of people said, and most importantly, you know already what is the potential in India. I think the potential is huge. But bottom line I can say here is that if I look at the trends in India, whether it's automotive, IoT, or EMS, I've been involved in this industry for 37 years. 2 decades ago, China had similar trends. Now they have made progress in many areas, not in all the areas. So now for us, whether we are showing the same trends now 2 decades later, and the question for us is this the time to do or still talk and just talk? So, and that's the message that I want to take it further. I think the time is to do now. Why now? 2017 has been a record year for the SEMI industry. When I started this industry, we used to have either feast or famine. Either we have a double-digit growth for 1 year, and then 2 years, double-digit decline. Average growth was high single-digit for the years, and industry grew from 20-some billion, 30 billion in late 70s or 80s to 420 billion today. But last year, we grew 22%. The best ever year for the industry to grow. Now, why? First of all, if you go back the history, we started with computer centers. We did not have desktop computers. Computer center will go and punch cards and get the printout and feed the data and say, okay, this is what we do. Today, computer centers have been translated into data centers. But in between, from computer centers to desktops, then to laptops, to cell phones, to tablets, to smartphones. But there was an era of something for 3-4 years that really helped grow the industry. But today, it's not just era of one thing. And you probably heard many today, and I already mentioned few. today is the era of like 15 disruptions going on at the same time for the last couple of years. That's what is fueling the growth. Just AI alone, if you really look at what AI means, it only means more chips for compute, for storage, for processing, and for communication. Lot more chips, lot more sensors, lot more data management. So there's no limit. I think this is really the number of disruptions really convinces us that time is now, because this is the wave. If we don't ride this wave now, then we will never get chance to ride on this wave. And I really mean that. There's a message here on the bottom of this slide. The good times are expected to continue through this year. This year we expect 8 to 12% growth also. But smart vertical applications, the big winners in 17, Korea. Korea, Samsung and Hynix became the top two. Samsung became number one semiconductor company. Intel used to be number one for many years. They pushed Intel to number 2. And SK Hynix became number 3. They used to be among the top 10. They're now among top 3. Now, I give one exception there. Part of the growth was the memory prices. But memory prices, I don't think they're coming down. Again, that's my view. But at the same time, the hype is there, and people are riding the wave, and they have the ambition that we want to continue driving this and maintain the leadership position. China is also done very well. Everybody knows about China. I'll spend a few more minutes on China. US has also done very well in recent years. But the question is, where are we in India? So I think I already said that. The time for India is now. I think ESDM focus is the right focus, because that creates the demand. So again, I will skip this slide. I think let's go to the next slide. Very briefly, if I look at the China's situation, the import versus export, there is a lot of imbalance of the trade export. So they are importing a lot more than they're exporting. So Chinese are very concerned about this, just like India is, right? And if you look at the next slide, they are on a rise. There are about 20 fabs under construction in China as we speak today. Now, China's approach in last 5-year plan in 2014, they announced close to $250 billion investment in the semiconductor industry. All the disruptions I talk about, the foundation of the growth has been disruption. For the foundation for disruption is semiconductors. There's no questions about that. So China rightfully went in this direction that they need to strategically focus on the right thing for the country, which is $250 billion investment. So as a result of the Chinese investment, as Ashwini-ji mentioned, I was on the committee for Obama's manufacturing in US, but also I was on another committee during the election year in September of 16, called PCAST. And if you Google PCAST, P-C-A-S-T, you will see the report. The objective of the report was, if China is going to invest $250 billion around the world to achieve this semiconductor ambition, what does it mean for US? Now, I was one of the lead members of the committee because I have been connected to the White House. I brought 6 or 7 more very, very well-established executives into the committee. And the context was, we don't have the right to tell China to slow down. Now, important message here. You cannot slow down China. The message was, if China is going fast, we should go faster. So that was the context, and we published a report. If you read it, it will give you a lot of ideas on what we need to do for the country. Since that report, since I joined SEMI, I've been asked by many countries, Taiwan, European Union, Korea, and Japan government to share my experience on PCAST. I think India needs to understand what is the PM India cast, or PM cast. So I think that's something, again, will give you food for thought, maybe the how part, what how means. Again, I'll skip the details. But But you know, we all talk about China. China has been successful in many things, but not in everything. Especially in the leading edge technologies, China has not been done very well. There's no question. And when it comes to screwdriver assembly, they've done marvelous. ESDM, they've done tremendous. Foxconn, which is a Taiwanese company, has millions of employees in China. So I think we have to be very, very careful that screwdriver assembly can be done. And like I said before, 7 billion people, we can still do more on that. So ESDM is right, but it creates a lot of infrastructure or ecosystem for semiconductors. So a lot of opportunities, and China has applied scale. China has imported talent from Taiwan, mostly Taiwan, which has created a problem in Taiwan. So China has done lot of things right, but some things they have not been able to do it. The bleeding edge technologies, they still lack talent, and they are very concerned about whether they can make it, plus IP. So again, let's not feel that China is going to eat our lunch. I think we should learn the best of the best, what China has done right, how they have done right, what can we learn, and what we need to do right for ourselves. And it should not be China versus India, it should be China and India together. How we can serve the world from 3 billion connected people to 7 billion connected people. So I had several meetings with the MIT and other government officials in the last 3-4 years. In fact, I've been coming to India for many years. Actually, Dr. Zarabi is sitting here. He's the veteran of this the semi industry in India. I used to meet him in 80s when he was managing this SEL. And again, at that time I was in Bell Labs, and I was always willing to help India do better. And Dr. Devan Verma sitting here for his ambition to build fab. I've been supporting him all along how to drive his ambition. But so I'm still willing to do that. And I think we need to do a little bit more from government point of view, that stop talking. Its time has come that we need to execute. Even if we do something half right, we'll make progress. Instead of not doing anything, just talking is not the right approach. We need to take it further. And again, I want to be very respectful to the bureaucrats and the ministers. I think they're doing a lot of good things. I mean, I cannot take it away because India has done very well in the last 10 years or so, but that's not enough. We need to put India on fast track. That's really the message. And that's where I think SAMI can enable putting India on fast track. So I said before, the window of opportunity is now. Opportunity for India's government and industry to leverage key SAMI platforms. I told you that we have a worldwide enabling platform. We can help. And market, I think Higashi-san also talked about it. We all know that. We used to think that population is a curse, but population is an asset. So we have the asset, we have the market. So I think future is in our hand. The only thing I want to have the request to the politicians and bureaucrats is, like I said, I've been coming to India for many, many years. I'm pushing, and there are many more people like me. I'm not the only one. Devan Verma, he's a very successful entrepreneur. He's spending his time in India. He's trying to give to India. We're pushing ourselves. I want the government and the Indian industries to pull us. And I can tell you there are many more Ajit Manochas and Devan Verma in California and US and the rest of the world. They're willing to help India if you pull us. So that's the change has to be made by the Indian community to say, how do we pull the talent from outside to make India more successful? So in concluding remarks, I think Sami, I mentioned that we drive anything you need to help. I mean, I can bring people like Mr. Higashi and many more leaders to you, but they will not come again and again if you don't really take their help in a proper way. They have business to run, but they also want, it has to be inspiring for them. It has to be win-win. So that's really the food for thought, but Sami can help. Again, India has a lot of ingredients of success, but what is missing is the global perspective, the collaboration, and that's where Sami and ISA can together provide you that. And that's the commitment I made with Ashwini, that SEMI will support ISA in enabling semiconductor ambition for India. And of course, one other thing, we don't have time to make mistakes, too many mistakes. We're going to make few mistakes here and there. If you really go back the history of last 40 years, in 1980s, US was the leader, then Japan became the leader, then Korea, rise of Korea, then rise of Taiwan, rise of China, now again rise of Korea. The rise and fall of various key countries. And Europe, at one time Europe was growing, but Europe is nowhere now. I think there are a lot of lessons that SEMI has, and people like myself in the industry, Terry Higashi, we have the history knowledge. We can bring that history to India so that we don't make the same mistakes what other countries made to have the rise and fall, so that we only have rise going forward. And that's the thing which SEMI can really bring. So again, my mantra from Bell Labs is same as the SEMI's mantra. That's why I joined SEMI. Connect, collaborate, innovate, grow, and prosper. With that, I'll say thank you very much. And I want to say, Mera Bharat Mahan, and that has been my message for a long time, and I firmly believe in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ajit sir. Actually, as I shared, the wealth of information that Ajit sir brings on the table is phenomenal. Just imagine, in this visit, there are at least 3 ATMP potent joint venture seekers who are trying to take handshake back with him to see if they can get an insight with some global leaders on that opportunity in India. I would like to introduce the next speaker, Mr. Krishnan Srinivasan, Ginny, Managing Director, Lam Research, and he has an exciting topic, semiconductor industry, perspective on opportunities, and over to an industry leader on this.
First of all, I'd like to thank Ashwini ji and the IESA for giving me the opportunity to speak here. So I'm very thankful to you. It's actually quite humbling to follow Dr. Manocha and Higashi-san. And if I may be permitted a comment that is not made out of disrespect, but it's made out of respect, that sometimes people who visit us see more opportunity in India than those of us that actually live here. And I think Higashi-san's and Dr. Manocha's presentations were a classic example of that. We tend to see the problems that we live amongst, and they tend to see the massive opportunities. And so I think we are truly indebted to both of you. Thank you very much. This small conversation is titled A Perspective on Opportunities. And what I want to do is actually present to you some almost macroeconomic information on the semiconductor industry with some commentary around the opportunities that we have here in India to participate in this very exciting space. I know that the topic for this particular Vision Summit is entrepreneurship, economics, and electronics. And being a representative of a well-established company, there are many other people who can talk a lot more about entrepreneurship here than I can. But I'll try and focus a little bit in this presentation on the portions of electronics and economics. Very quickly, as an introductory matter, I just want to kind of put some material behind us. Lam itself is a global leader in wafer fabrication. We are the second largest semiconductor capital equipment company in the world at the moment. And in calendar 2017, our revenue was almost approximately $10 billion. Unfortunately, we don't manufacture anything in India. We wish we did. However, I think a large amount of investment from Lam Research is flowing into India, primarily in the area of R&D and engineering. And it's probably fair to say today that Indian engineers contribute to the design of Lam's leading-edge products, whether it's in the control software, in applications enabling our customers, the design of mechanical engineering hardware, and electrical engineering, and in terms of computational simulations of the machines. There are a lot of contributions emanating from our design center here in Bangalore. And that's something that we are proud of. Lam has enunciated a very clear geographic strategy that India is actually a central portion of that geographic strategy. we prefer to see the world in this particular way. So this is kind of what we call the semiconductor food chain or the electronics food chain. Obviously, we sit at the bottom of this food chain. We are in the wafer fabrication equipment industry. The view from the top of this food chain can be pretty panoramic, but I think the view from the bottom is actually quite illuminating. If you look at the industry itself is as large as the Indian economy. The entire electronics worldwide industry is as large as the entire Indian economy. And an increasing portion of that electronics industry is actually being captured in the semiconductor space. Today, I think we're talking about 1/4, roughly, or 20% roughly, of the electronics industry value emanates from semiconductors. Of course, we capture a very small volume of it at the bottom. The interesting thing that's going on, and many speakers before me have alluded to that, is the range of different innovations that are driving semiconductor content. Not only are we talking about the diversity of vectors of growth. Traditionally, the semiconductor industry relied on personal computing, and then the internet, then mobile computing, or mobile telephony. But today, with artificial intelligence, IoT, cloud computing, the autonomous automobile, there are multiple vectors of growth. And we internally echo what Dr. Manocha said a few minutes ago, that the opportunities for growth continue to be exciting in this industry. Unfortunately, I think it's fair to say that India does not participate in the semiconductor industry. And I think the question we have to ask ourselves today, and the dignitaries assembled here need to ask this question of ourselves: when do we start? What do we do about it? And how do we go about doing it? Because I think to have a country that represents 1/6 of mankind with the kind of technical prowess that we have here in India, the capabilities that we have here, and to not participate in this exciting, innovative industry is actually not tenable. So that's something that I'd like to put on the table here as something to think about. The other factor of this industry is that it actually employs probably the widest range of technical and non-technical talent of almost any industry. You actually have people from the infrastructure level. You know, most of our fabs have captive air separation plants sitting outside them. So from that infrastructure level, it employs technical talent all the way down to people who manipulate atomic level materials or materials at an atomic level. And the entire spectrum of technical talent is employed by this industry. Once again, the opportunity on the table is, India is one of those very few countries in the world that actually graduates a significant percentage of its college-going talent in this wide spectrum of technical fields. And I think we are missing an opportunity by not employing them appropriately. Just another commentary on the trends, both in the semiconductor industry as well as the equipment industry. We all know that these industries tend to be cyclical, even though the cycles have been dampened out a little bit. But if you look at it, the last few years have witnessed kind of almost rapid monotonic growth that we have not experienced in the past, and Dr. Manocha referred to that a few minutes ago. So this growth, once again, is actually being driven by the diversity of growth vectors. And we mentioned all this, previous speakers have mentioned all of this, the artificial intelligence, virtual reality, augmented reality, and so on and so forth. The question is, what portion of that growth can we capture here in India? And when would it be appropriate to jump in? And I think just to echo Dr. Manocha a few minutes ago, the question to the dignitaries, the assembled decision makers in industry and government is, what steps do we need to take now to capture this growth? I personally myself have actually sat on this dais about 3 years ago questioning the need for India to have a semiconductor industry. In view of the past 3 years, I think it's become very clear that an industry presence in India is something that's to be desired. It's necessary for the continued growth of even the fabless ecosystem, which was being talked about in the previous panel. what's driving this growth? So from our perspective, if you look at it, I think there's been, at the top of the macroeconomic food chain, sustained coordinated growth in the national economies of a variety of different countries. Of course, highlighted by the rapid growth here in India and China, where we are exceeding 6.5% GDP growth rate. That's driving increased demand for electronics, not only in the traditional markets with the personal computing, smartphones, but also in some of the newer markets that were being discussed. And so that's resulting in electronics growth at the 5 to 6% compounded annual growth rate. The semiconductor market itself now, because of the increased digitization of everyday life, the increased adoption of semiconductor content in electronics, is growing at a faster rate than the electronics industry as a whole. And we are seeing high single digits to low double digit compounded annual growth rate in semiconductor shipments year on year. Of course, we at Lam are beneficiaries of that growth. We are seeing ourselves 10 to 15 compounded annual growth rate in terms of our revenues. In terms of the industry segments that we serve, memory is growing the fastest, as we can imagine, with the adoption of solid-state memory in laptop computers, the need for network storage so that all the data pouring in from the big data, in the big data area and analytics is driving the need for memory. So we are benefiting from a rapid growth in the memory segment of our markets. Logic is growing at a slower rate, but still growing nonetheless. And that's kind of driving pretty much at a very high level the rapid growth both in the semiconductor industry and the semiconductor equipment industry that we were seeing in the previous slide. In addition to, I think, all of the end market growth that these previous slides demonstrated, there are some really exciting technological inflections that people like us keep track of. Some few of these technological inflections are actually listed out here on this slide. But the important thing is that they are driving a very large change in how we fabricate semiconductors, the technology of semiconductors, whether it's on hybrid patterning schemes, changes in the gate architecture. These are now integration architecture changes, the adoption of different materials for interconnect, of course, the 3D vertical NAND adoption, and finally, wafer level packaging. They're driving enormous innovations in both our customer base as well as in the semiconductor capital equipment space. And from an India perspective, what that really means is people like Lam and our friends at Applied Materials and other places like that are now increasingly reaching out to Indian talent because the rapid pace of this technological change is creating a pretty voracious demand for technical talent. And the ability of people like Lam and people like Applied Materials to use Indian technical talent, not just in the traditional fields of software engineering or electrical engineering, but also in material sciences, in chemical engineering, in chemistry and physics, in mechanical engineering. That's driving a lot of investment now in India, which is creating on the downstream side an ecosystem that can now begin to sustain semiconductor manufacturing in this country, actual semiconductor manufacturing in this country. The previous panel talked a little bit about the upstream side, which is the design side. We are now creating facts on the ground here that are creating an opportunity for our policymakers to seriously consider the means by which semiconductor manufacturing can be brought to India. Finally, in summary, what I'd like to do is just put out some more data here. This is the rate at which a company like Lam invests in R&D. We are proud to say we invest between 12 and 15% of our revenue in R&D, creating that demand for the talent that's listed on this particular slide. Increasingly, companies like Lam are reaching out to India to fulfill this demand for the talent. And we are growing this ecosystem of talent and utilization from the bottom up. And I think the question, the challenge that I'd like to put out in front of the audience and put out in front of the decision makers here is, how do we leverage this? And how do we get serious about building a semiconductor industry here that completes the entire semiconductor innovation cycle, the ecosystem that we're talking about? So with that, I'd like to thank you very much for your attention and thank you for the opportunity to present here.
Thank you, Jenny. Ladies and gentlemen, our last speaker for this particular session is Dr. Fabio Pelassi. He comes to us from Applied Materials West Germany, Elenzau operations and he's his R&D manager. His topic, electronics, the future is flexible, focuses on a very different aspect of high-tech manufacturing, flexible electronics, and Dr. Fabio.
Thank you very much for your introduction. So, good afternoon to everybody. So today I will talk about applications on flexible substrates, so different from wafers or glass they mentioned until now. In my talk, I will give a short introduction about applied materials. I will discuss trends and application for flexible substrate, and then I will show you some architectures that are enabling those applications. So introduction to applied materials. This morning, Dr. Nalamazu already gave an extensive description of applied materials, so I think applied materials is sufficiently known. I don't have to add much. What for sure is not, I guess, known to the majority of the people here is the technology center in Germany, in Alzenau. So we are 30 kilometers from Frankfurt Airport, so convenient to reach. So please feel free to visit us. And this technology center is the large area application technology center of applied materials for display, OLED, and roll-to-roll applications. In particular, roll-to-roll applications, so here we have engineering capabilities, so we develop the process, we develop the tools, and we also produce the tools there. And this group has decades of experience, and this is reflected in the hundreds of systems that are installed in the field. So, applications for flexible electronics. This slide shows you the mega trends driving the incredible technology developments that are happening now. So for people working in technology now, it's a fun fair. So there are so many things you can do. So this has been already illustrated. But it is true that these technology developments will translate in business opportunities. So think about the Internet of Things. So it is true that billions of sensors will be required. Think about wearables, so your smartwatches already, or e-healthcare, you mentioned health. This is already pulling. We don't have to push the technology. So healthcare is already pulling the applications. And so we are in a situation where this vision of trillion sensors is not a dream, it's happening already. Okay, this slide to give you some information about current and the future applications. So let's start with the conventional food packaging application. So what we produce on field barriers for food packaging, touch panels. So all the touch panels of your mobile phones are based on plastic films. Anti-reflection coatings are based on plastic films. And then you have also security, the decorative applications, and you have window films to protect you from infrared radiation. But this will develop also for the future applications. So really, we are talking already and developing flexible displays. We are talking about circuits. So RFID is one example, but they will be made on plastics. Thin film batteries. So applied material will also contribute to this, and this is, don't underestimate. Imagine for the portable application, so weight is the key, so you need a very light batteries. Otherwise, your device can be engineered as you like, but it will be too heavy for you. And of course, intelligent packaging. And this will entail circuit, batteries, so complicated electronic circuits. Applied Material currently has a a tool portfolio covering all depositions, all the materials required to enable this application. So we start from the standard evaporation tools. You can have thermal, E-beam, or inductive heating. You have the sputtering tool, Smart Web, and there is the new roll-to-roll CVD tool for the deposition not only of dielectrics but also of semiconductors. So let me go now a little bit deeper and describe these architectures. So let's start with the Smart Web. Smart Web is the industry leader for sputtering on films. It's based on it exploits the rotary cathode technology. So instead of having planar targets, you have rotary cathodes, and this enable higher target utilization, driving the cost of ownership down and less defects. And as you can see in the cross section there, it's a modular system. You have a cold coding drum. You can install several targets, and this enables you to realize multi-layer stacks in one pass. Maybe a couple of applications. So ITO deposition for touch panel, it's still a very important application. As you can see in the graph, it's growing. So there are other applications for flexible display, but still the request for ITO, it's really ramping. Another application is window film. So please, not make confusion. I'm not talking about dyed or metallized layers, very simple. They block light, you see something dark. I'm talking about low E layers. So these are optical filters. Engineering stack of layers, as you can see in the graph on the right side, you can achieve perfect transmission in the visible range. So this means you see through the glass. But when you go in the infrared region, so the heat, this is blocked. And this can only be achieved through sputtering of several layers and advanced, and this can be applied both for automotive or architectural glass. Let me now introduce the newly developed CVD architecture. CVD, okay, so CVD is not something new for applied materials, in semiconductor first, in display, and now we also leverage this, the know-how for roll-to-roll applications. But a new platform, a new architecture has been developed. For more advanced application, you need no front contact. So let me go a couple of slides back. If you see the Smart Web, so you may see the coating side of the roll is also touching rollers. So you coat this side and you also have contact with rollers. And this, of course, generates some kind of defects. The new architecture, and believe me, it's not easy. So it's not easy to have the right tension, the right condition to deposit your web. Is a front surface contact free. So the coating side of your web never touches any rollers. So this guarantees a minimized defect layer to your process. It's very versatile, can deposit webs up to 1.5 meter in width, and can be also used for PVD applications. This is one application you can think of. It's pretty important. So we have packaging. So we have barriers. So we start with standard packaging, as we said, and then we have the evaporation tools. But when we are talking about ultra-high barriers, so imagine of OLED display, OLED lighting, or organic PV. They are extremely sensitive to moisture, oxygen. You have to protect them. But you have to guarantee years of working conditions. And this can only be achieved with ultra-high barriers. So this is the unit of, if you are not familiar with it, so water vapor is measured in gram of water per square meter per day. So standard in packaging, we are around 10, 1. We're talking about 10 to minus 6. And this can be realized with multi-layer depositions, so silicon nitride, silicon oxide, and the new architecture without any front contact. And also metrology. So this tool has the very first inspection system able to detect down to 1 micrometer defects at 5 meters per second. So the only tool available on the world at the moment. Imprint. So I showed you the smart web. So we have sputtering. So we have the metals. We have the semiconductor materials. CVD. So we have oxide, dielectrics, semiconductors. Now we have all the layers together. What's the next step? Patterning. Out of these layers, we can realize devices. But how to make it on flexible substrate? The decision was to go with imprint. Imprint self-aligned imprint lithography technology was acquired by Applied Materials from Hewlett-Packard. They originally developed this technology. And they already demonstrated micrometer size features. Applied Materials, so we are now extending this capability. We are in the hundreds of nanometer range. And as you can see here, depending how fine are the structure, you can think about so many applications. Today we talk about optical applications, electronics. You can think about active devices, transistors. So we are going in the direction of flexible electronics. This slide gives you a schematic information how the imprint works. So you can, instead of making standard photolithography, you have a stamp and you imprint your layer. If there's a single layer, okay, it's just one, but if you have multi-layers, like in transistors, you have a kind of 3D imprinting stamp. And instead of having multiple deposition and lithography step, you just have all the depositions in one step. You make the imprint and you etch consecutively. So why this? Because if you have different process steps, so you will inevitably have some deformation of your substrate. But if you deposit all your layers and the photomask at the same time, doesn't matter. So your layers and your photoresist will deform together. So you lose no alignment. So when you have to align micrometer structure, it's critical to have no deformations. So with glass or semiconductors, it's different. But with web, this is really the key. And just to show you that in Alzenau, there is a pilot line production for this. So there are imprinter, there are the wet and the dry etcher. We have the spinner. So there are all the tools required to realize prototype production. So actually, this was I thought it was in time. So this was my presentation. So my key message is that Applied Materials, maybe this can, I don't know, inspire you for investment. Applied Materials can help you with a complete tool portfolio. If there are new applications, the existing tools have the flexibility to enable them. There are also new architecture, as we have seen, no front contact, even the most advanced applications can be now applied. And the last frontier is thin film patterning. We deposit the layers, and then we add value to the films that we deposit by creating devices. This is the contribution that Applied Materials is giving to the flexible electronic applications, and yeah, that's what. Hope you like it.
We'd like to thank all our speakers. I'd like to request Mr. Ashwini K. Agarwal, the chairman, IESA, to present a small token of our appreciation. First to Tetsuro Higashi-san. We'd like to extend our thanks to Mr. Ajit Manocha, President and CEO of Semi. I'd like to extend our thanks to Mr. Krishnan Srinivasan, Managing Director, Lam Research. And last but not least, to Dr. Fabio, Project Manager R&D Applied Materials.